Hi, welcome to Bright Hope. You can find all our information on our webpage, on our Facebook page, and you can subscribe to our videos on the YouTube channel. We're seeing a series called An Extraordinary Life. This is class number 3. Good things come in small packages. Last week I spoke a bit about the dreams that God has for us and the need for us to be walking in a certain direction. Today I want to talk about the first steps in walking towards that goal, that plan that God has for you. I remember one Christmas where my family asked me, "What do you want?" Because the tradition that we always held to was that everybody would decide weeks beforehand exactly what they wanted. They would hand out their lists left, right, and centre. And on Christmas Day, there were no surprises. Everybody knew exactly what they were going to get. And this year, I asked for money. I just wanted to go out and spend it all on Boxing Day, the following day in the sales. And so everybody gave me just money. Whilst everyone was opening all their presents, I found myself looking at several sorry little envelopes and opening them up and thinking, this is so lame, I really need a present here to open. And I think the highlight was a next voucher. I decided that having a big present would be a lot better. And I think in our culture, having bigger and better things, that's the general thought that everybody goes towards. In many cases, bigger is better. Having a massive screen in your lounge to be able to watch telly. You want to go in and you want the whole wall to be covered. I guess like in Back to the Future 2. We like bigger portions in McDonald's, super size me. We want a bigger Twix, a bigger Mars bar. I've been away from England for about 15 years. I come back and my question is, what is going on with the Mars bar and the Twix? They seem to have reduced in size, yet the price has gone astronomically high. I want a bigger Twix. I want a bigger Mars bar. I want a bigger salary, A lot of people are always after, I want to earn more, I want to have more spending power. But at what cost are they going after those things? Sometimes at the cost of their family, sometimes at the cost of their health or their free time, their downtime, the time with their friends. In many cases in today's society, bigger is better. But there is a truth that good things do come in small packages. Women love getting little boxes from their boyfriends, from their husbands, on Valentine's Day, on birthdays, on all these occasions. The list goes on. They like getting this tiny little box that just opens up like that, and it's wonderful things come in these tiny little boxes. I remember having micro machines when I was younger, and all the small things. Everyone would say, "Oh, it's so sweet, it's so cute," and because it's everything that a big thing should have, but it's just so tiny. It can fit in your hand. Smaller things are also awesome. We look at Wicket. He was amazing and amazingly small. Mini me. I think we can all agree that the Hobbit movies, they needed to be smaller in size. We didn't need 3 movies for that. They could have been one large movie, or at least just in the 2. Some things being small are really awesome. Just look at that, I'm talking about chocolate. England is fascinated by chocolate. Every holiday is celebrated by eating chocolate. Annie and I were talking about this whilst we were devouring the rest of these Cadbury's cream eggs. Look at that. I don't care that it's tiny. That is a tiny bundle of amazingness. So, I'll have that a little later. We can find some amazing small things, and I think God uses small things. He doesn't start with something that's already great and already wonderful and already grown to massive proportions and the dream exactly as it is. It's not a massive packaged dream. He always starts with something that's small. He always starts with something that's perhaps not ready, that has, the edges are still on it and it hasn't been trimmed down to size. It's not in its end phase, it's beginning, it's rough. God needs to work with it, and that's what he loves using. He wants to take you and I, and he wants to use us exactly how we are, and he wants to start with the small. And if you say, "No, I'm not that small, I've got a lot of things which are great," well, it might be that he takes you and he says, "Well, some of those things I have to reduce in size." Perhaps what is big in our life would be our pride, would be our self-confidence, would be our ego, that I am amazing. And they're the kind of things that God says, I don't want to work with that. I want to bring you down to size, because when you stop trusting in yourself and you can start trusting in me, then things are gonna pan out a lot better for you. They're gonna be great for you in the long run, but in the short term, pride comes before a fall, and God doesn't want that for us. So God loves taking things which are small, things which are insignificant, things which perhaps the world would overlook, and He says, I want to use that. I can use that. That's great clay in my hands. God will not give us the end product dream because He's so focused on the process. He loves working with us to get to that place. I always think, I just want to start in position A and I want to end up in position B, and we're very linear. But God says, no, I want to walk with you as you get to point B, and I want to be with you in that process, and I want you to grow, and I want you to trust in me, and I want you to walk with me, and I want you to have patience and resilience and determination, and I want you to perhaps die to yourself and get everything that I have for you. God is really focused in the process, because in the process, our ego does die, our self-confidence does die. That doesn't mean that we're not confident in ourselves, but our confidence in ourselves comes from trusting completely in Him and knowing completely who I am in Him. Myself, apart from Jesus, I have nothing. I am nothing. I recognize that. And so, all the strength that we need, it comes from being in Jesus. So God loves small things. He loves starting with small things and working with them, because at the end of the day, the glory is His, and it's not ours. It has to be for Him. God doesn't share His glory with anybody else. Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much." You may say, "Well, I don't have a lot. My life is mainly small things," and well, for you, that's going to be really easy to give over to God. If you've got tons of things, like the rich young ruler, he said, "Jesus, what can I do to follow you?" And Jesus turned around and said, "Sell everything you have and then come follow me." Yeah, it says Jesus loved him, "Come follow me." And it says that he walked away really sad because he had so many things. Now, that's not a plan of action that we throw at everybody, sell all that you have. No, it was that one case, because the possessions that he had, they were his God. And he needed to let go of what was so important to him. He had to die to himself that was so important in order to follow Jesus. But the truth is, those that are faithful with the little will be faithful in much. So when we take care of the first steps, when we take care of the foundation that we're placing, then we can build upon that and say, God, have all that I am, all that I possess, which isn't a great deal, but I want to give it over to you. And if you can be faithful in those little things, if you can be faithful in that early time, then God can trust you that when things start to grow and things become better and stronger, then God knows that your heart is in the right place. God is looking at us, and He's looking at the small things in our lives. In Mark 12:41, it tells a story of Jesus sitting around with His disciples, and they were discussing, and this rich guy came along, and he threw this massive bag of money at the temple leaders, and he said, "Here, have all of this." And everybody marveled and said, "Whoa, holy crap, that guy's given so much. Look how much, what are they going to be able to buy with that money? How many people are they going to be able to help with that?" And then this poor widow walked along, and with nobody seeing what she was doing, she just pulled a couple of coins out of her purse and she threw it in the offering, and she carried on. And Jesus said, "You know what? You see that lady there? She gave a lot more than the rich guy that gave this. He wrote out this massive check. She gave so much more than him because she gave out of her need. She gave everything that she had to live on, whereas that guy just gave out of his abundance. He had 1,000 more bags of money back in his mansion." So Jesus was looking at that woman and looking at the small things, the insignificant things we might think. But God is looking at the small things in our life. In 2 Kings, there's a great story of this guy called Elisha. He's this prophet, this big cheese. He's going around preaching and doing all these amazing miracles left, right, and center. And in one of these miracles, he heals this guy from leprosy. This guy, his body. He's a captain of the enemies of Israel. But he comes to Elisha to ask, can you please do something for me? And Elisha doesn't even see him face to face, but through his servant, he says, tell him to go and wash in the river twice and his leprosy will be healed. Now, leprosy was a terrible, terrible disease. Your body, I mean, think The Walking Dead, but in life. Your parts of your body are dropping off. You can't feel, if you get injured, then you can't feel it, and that's perhaps one of the worst things about it. And then you can't touch your friends or your family. You can't hug your kids, your wife. You can't have anything to do with anybody because it's so contagious. I mean, it is literally a death sentence upon anybody. And Elisha healed him. He said, go and wash twice in the river. Just jump in and out twice, and you'll be healed. And Naaman was healed because he listened to this man of God, and that was the instruction, and he had to do it. That's a major miracle. This really big issue. And then in the following chapter, you've got this chap who's chopping down a tree, and he's one of the servants there with Elisha, and he's working, helping, and he's chopping down this tree, and the axe head comes flying off the top of the axe, and it falls into the river, and it sinks to the bottom. And he turns around and says, "Oh nuts! I just borrowed that from my neighbour, and my neighbour doesn't like me very much, and now I have to go and tell him that I've lost his axe, and I really hope it's not his favourite axe." And Elisha hears him and says, "What's up?" And he says, "Well, I've lost this guy's axe. I remember borrowing the 3 Star Wars films on VHS from these people, and I put it into the machine and it chewed up the tape, and I just felt so bad having to explain to them that it wasn't my fault, that it was the VHS that had destroyed these incredible movies, and thankfully we could, with a bit of sellotape and some engineering, we were able to solve it. But it is really bad, borrowing something and then breaking it or losing it. And this is a minor issue, but Elijah turns and he just, I guess he prayed or just declared something, and the axe head started to float, and the guy could pull it out. Now, we see the one guy getting healed from this life-threatening disease, and then you see this axe head, and you say, that is such a tiny thing. But for him, it was a big deal, and God focuses on our tiny details, the little things, the things that these little worrisome details that affect our life every day. God is also focused on those things. I see this as a wonderful story of God focusing on the large things and God focusing on the small things. Zechariah 4:10 says, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." Do not despise these small beginnings. We meet every Tuesday night at the Crescent Resource Centre in Lower Early, and we've just started, just the family basically. And I would really love, to see 50 people coming every Tuesday. But I know that we're going to start small. I know that God works with things, and it's a lesson for us as a couple, Annie, myself. It's a lesson for my girls, because we've been meeting and it's just us, and my girls are wondering, is anybody going to come? And we just say, God is in control, and God's going to do what he's going to do, and we know that we're going to start small, but we can't despise the small beginnings. I think everybody needs to have a meeting where nobody comes several times, so that you can say nobody came at the beginning. It was just us. So that's what we've been believing. We know that we're not going to despise these small beginnings, because it's actually quite relaxing when you're just giving a teaching, and it's just your wife who's telling you that you've been going on for too long. In the Bible, God likes small things and small beginnings. We see Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It was just the two of them, and God said, go and fill the earth. That was their project. Noah and his family, again, it was okay. Go and populate the earth. the 12 disciples, go and transform the world, preach the gospel and get the news out that Jesus has risen again. And they had to go out just, to begin with. It was just the 12 of them. And they, started touching and impacting the continent. So God likes using small things, and in time he starts to bless it and to grow. But we can't despise the small beginnings. We have to say, well, God, it's in your hands, and you're the one that's going to bring growth. You're the one that's going to do it in my life. You're the one who's going to do it in my work, in my family, in my ministry, whatever area. Don't despise the small beginnings. In the same way that these small beginnings and these small areas of our life, all added together, can bring great blessing to our life. Well, also, the little things that we don't take care of, the little things that perhaps the niggly little things that are part of our life can also turn into great enemies, later on. If there's unforgiveness in our life, if there's a sin, if there's a battle that is going on, and I'm not sharing, I'm not seeking help about it, I'm not giving it over to God, or I'm not, spending time with other people and saying, look, I need help, pray for me in this or pray for me in that. Well, those things can come back to bite us. If there's anger, lack of self-esteem, if there are things in our lives that perhaps on their own are not bad, but they start to grow and they take control of our lives. I mean, there are people that are addicted to Facebook or their email or football, or their team loses and it's a matter of, I'm going to be depressed for at least today, tomorrow, and possibly the following day, so nobody talk to me. Well, that is out of control, and if we don't have those things in check, then they could also lead us to a path. They could carry us not towards a promise that God has for us, but towards unhappiness or unfulfillment or frustration. In Song of Solomon 2:15, it says, "Catch for us the little foxes that ruin the vineyards," our vineyards that are in bloom. These little foxes are these little issues. Again, starting with the small things. Quite often, we can experience growth in different areas of our life, but because we're enjoying so much the growth, we're not taking care of the smaller things. And in later classes, I want to talk about individually what are the little elements that we need to be reminding ourselves and seeing what God says, and how we can apply those to our life to walk in blessing and to walk in this extraordinary life. When I talk about the small things that we should focus upon, the everyday habits that are going to help us. Well, some of them are spiritual and some of them are physical. I always like to start with God, because the Bible says, seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then all the other things will be added unto you. So I think, finding God as the most important aspect of our life. And I know that Annie loves God more than she loves me. And she knows that I love God more than I love her, and that might seem, why? Well, if we love God first, then we receive God's love, and then we have so much love for one another. So everything for me begins with God, and when I want to cover all the bases, and when I want to be able to focus on all these details, I have to start with God. God is the first. Jesus is the first in everything that I'm doing. So talking about these little steps, I would say, first off, we need to remember God every moment of every day. It doesn't mean that you spend 8 hours, reading the Bible or 5 hours, in meditation and prayer. What it means is that during the whole day, you're constantly reminded that He's with you. He loves you. He has something for you. And, you take a time out to read a little portion of the Bible, or you take a few minutes just to speak to Him and be continually in contact with Him. You can be in your car. You can be, in your office. You can be on the loo. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing. You can remain in contact with Him and considering Him and saying, okay, I'm going to follow Jesus, but not at work, or I'm going to follow Jesus just in church on Sunday. Well, no, that's not how we live. If we live following Jesus, then He's the Lord of all our life and all the aspects of our life. And so these little things, the first little thing we need is considering Jesus in everything we're doing, and that he be present in everything we're doing. So after that, it is also, spending time with other people that love Jesus and learning a bit more about him, so that we are growing in the spiritual areas of our life, because that affects everything else. Then there are habits that can have a greater effect upon us towards success, at work or with our family. Relationships, it's so important that you're not isolated. A lot of men live very isolated. They can't share how they're feeling. They don't share with either their wife or their girlfriend or their children. Even less are they sharing with their buddies. Perhaps they share a bit, but outside of that, there's not a great deal of bonding going on. And a lot of people are facing everything on their own. There's a lot of loneliness. So developing good friendships, that's a tiny element that we need to focus on. Good timekeeping, being somebody who when you say you're going to arrive at a certain time, you arrive at a certain time, and you plan out. Good planning. I need to leave at a certain time to arrive at a certain time, or in order to do this, I need to give myself a certain amount of time. Administrating resources. Whether it be your time, whether it be your finances, whether it be making sure there's time for the family, there's enough time for work and whatnot. Being somebody who's good at administrating, whatever it may be, being healthy with your finances. Taking care in the little things. It all adds up. So trying to live as much as you can without debt. Having honesty, integrity. In your work or in your studies, with your family, all these little elements, they're so important, but they're the small things in life that add up to a successful long-term plan. In conclusion, we need to understand when we look at where we are, when we look at where we want to be, when we see and take hold of this plan that God has for us, we need to remember four things. Number one, we need to understand God's view of the small things. Small things in our life, the small beginnings, the small steps, the small details, whether they be good things, bad things, these small habits that are around us. God will always see the potential in you. He will always see the potential in a situation. So we need to see how God sees these things, have God's view of the small things. That's number one. Number two, don't despise small beginnings. Embrace small beginnings. Great, it's just us. Okay, well let's have an amazing family time. Or okay, well I've got this amazing job which I'm gonna get in 20 years. Right now, I'm just cleaning football boots, or I'm just making coffee for everybody left, right, and centre. It doesn't matter. Whatever you do it with all your heart. And don't despise the small beginnings, because all of that is creating character in you. Give thanks for what you have, and give thanks for where you are. You may have a job that is not exactly where you want to be in 15, 20 years, but you have a job. You may not have the house that you want. You have an apartment and you have 8 wonderful roomies. Enjoy what you have right now, because in 10, 15 years you're going to miss the smell of 8 roomies around you. You can look back and you say, oh, such a lovely time, turning around and finding someone's foot in my face. We have to give thanks for what we have right now. Number 3, dream big dreams, but understand they come with small steps. Dream big dreams, but understand they all begin with small steps. So we don't despise small beginning, and we do start to make steps. And number 4 is steps in the right direction. You understand that you need to step out before you need to do it in the right direction. And that could be a direction, you can choose. At the end of the day, you will always get to choose in which direction do you want to go. Do you want to go closer to God, or do you want to go further from God? Do you want to walk towards this goal, which is, a human goal, a selfish goal? Or do you want to go towards what God has and perhaps an eternal goal? The decision is completely yours. And at the end of the day, you're going to make your bed and you're going to lie in it. So, those four things, just quickly, understand God's view of the small things. Don't despise small beginnings. Understand that big dreams begin with small steps. And 4, make steps in the right direction. I really hope you've enjoyed this message. Remember, you can find all our information on the Facebook page, on our web page, and on the YouTube. You can subscribe to see this teaching and the past teachings. And we really hope that you can perhaps join us on a Tuesday evening at the Crescent Resource Centre. We really look forward to seeing you there. And we're going to be seeing, small beginnings, but God's gonna do some amazing things. So God bless you. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.